Good morning.
Hey there. Back again.
Back again. Welcome, everyone. Session 56.
56. Let's get started. In our last session, 55, we covered 3 letters that are not part of the numbered series in the Mahatma Letters to A.P. Sinnett. The first one was a letter from HPB to Sinnett that she had written and sent from Darjeeling. And she said, "How did you know I was here? You must have a network of spies that keep track of me." And so she then proceeded to talk about her visit with the Mahatmas and how she spent 2 solid days with them. And I think this must have been in the middle of her stay in Darjeeling, because they did meet more than just the 2 days. We didn't get much of a follow-up, but we will get just a little bit more information in a future letter. Then the second letter was really interesting, how a Chela met his guru. And we found out that there were a number of Babus who followed HPB, hoping to get a glimpse of the Mahatmas. And she and they, the Mahatmas, did not want all of these hangers-on to be there. So one by one, they all got lost. And this one Chela, S. Ramaswamy, had been invited to come, but apparently unknown to HPB. So as it turned out, he got a private meeting with Moria for more than an hour. And his story is very interesting. So if you haven't watched it yet, go back to 55 and watch that part of the episode.
We haven't really talked much about how many Theosophists actually did come into physical contact with the masters. We haven't really discussed that, but it's not many. It's probably just a handful, right? If that.
At this point, I think that only HPB had. Several others had seen them appear astrally.
Right. Not even Olcott. He hadn't seen them.
No, not yet, but in a few more months he will.
How curious, though, that this guy, Ramaswamy,
Well, for one thing, the Asian Chelas are much more sensitive, and they know more about the doctrine intuitively, and they are more apt to be in tune psychically with them. Remember that he received messages from his guru. He said that it was just as plain as day, like he heard exact words. Go get on the train and find HPB, or things of that nature.
Well, at this point in time, Damodar would have likely been with them.
Yes,
physically.
so he was very much in tune with them.
But physically,
he hadn't seen them physically.
Not even Damodar. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Not that I recall. So that's a recap of last session. Let's pick up here. Oh, there was one more letter, though. There was a letter from KH to A.O. Hume. And that one, remember in the previous session, he had received one letter that said basically, you know what? KH said, I don't see any reason to continue this communication. And now we're going to get a little bit more information about this. So we are on letter number 91, received in Shimla in October 1882. And this is coming still from the Parijang Monastery.
And this is from KH.
Yes, to Sinnett.
Okay. My dear friend, may I trouble you to hand the enclosed 50 rupees to Dharbagiri Nath when you see him.
Now, 50 rupees doesn't sound like very much, but if you translate it into today's money, it would be approximately $680. And Dharbagiri Nath, remember, was one of the Theosophists that signed the HX letter in the Theosophist, but he's also one who has lived for many years with the Mahatmas and been trained, highly trained by them. There's a very interesting and very strange story here. Do you remember several letters ago when Sinnett received the visit of two Chelas?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they were delivering a letter, KH's answers to their list of contradictions.
Accused
Right.
contradictions. Right.
They were not allowed to speak to any women, so he was told, make sure that it's only you when they come, and they're not even allowed to address a woman at all. So just you. And they also said you can ask questions, but just keep in mind they are not allowed to necessarily answer every one of them. Here's what happened, and it caused confusion for years after that. There were two Chelas. One of them was referred to as the little man.
Is that Deb?
No.
I thought he was little.
But here's the conundrum. It was the personality of Dharbagiri Nath, who was a high Chela, but in the body of Babaji, who was a very low Chela.
Oh, he was.
And yet he was able to lend his body to Dharbagiri Nath so he could appear to Sinnett. Otherwise, that never would have happened. And Sinnett wasn't advised of this at the time. It was explained to him later, but he got hopelessly confused till the end of his life. He still couldn't figure it out. We know, for example, that the Mahatmas can use HPB's body that way, but this is the first instance we've seen where one Chela, and not even one who was very advanced, was able to lend his body to a much more advanced Chela. He wasn't able to appear because he was going through a process or preparation for an initiation that made him extremely sensitive, and he couldn't be exposed to any outside influences or vibrations.
So instead of appearing astrally, he took the body of Babaji.
Right. And Sinnett wasn't even clairvoyant astrally, so that wouldn't have worked. So That's the background story. But now when he says Dharbagiri Nath, he's talking about Babaji because he's the one that appeared.
But Sinnett's not going to even understand that, is he?
I think what the Mahatma is doing is testing him to see if his intuition is working.
Wait, so are the two Chelas going to come back? Because this is after.
They have visited more than once.
Okay.
But then, obviously, he would come back in his own personality, Babaji. But here's the twist. He, for a long time, continued to use the name Dharbagiri Nath. Yeah. A little bit deceptive, but as the Mahatma said, any Chela who takes a mystical name is allowed to pick any name they want, even if it's the same name as someone else. And they couldn't interfere with that. So Babaji was trying to pass himself off as Dharbagiri Nath. Yeah.
When you're lending your body like HPB did a lot, and Alice Bailey probably did when DK was...
He communicated with her. I don't know of any instances when he actually used her body, but it's possible.
Is the person aware of what's going on?
Oh,
or
yes.
Are they kind of...
Oh, yeah.
I wonder how that works, because how can your brain be yours but also being used by... That's interesting.
Well, because it's almost like you're standing to the side.
I wonder if you're
and
still seeing through
it.
your eyes, though. I wonder...
Yes, they can see through your eyes. Use all of your senses.
If the person... I wonder if Babaji is aware, if he feels like he's being puppeteered, or if he's in like a trance state. That's interesting. I know this is off topic.
No, they might see things astrally rather than physically, because the physical eyes are occupied by the inhabitants.
It seems like they're being kind of knocked out of their body.
Right. And there is a term for that in the everyday world called a walk-in. Be more someone pushing you out.
Yeah, adversarial against the person's will. Yeah, interesting. So Dharbagiri Nath, the actual Dharbagiri Nath, would have been another example of one of the Theosophists who is in physical contact with the masters.
Oh, yeah, almost every day.
So KH continues, the little man is in trouble. That's Babaji.
Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't borrow the 50 rupees from Sinnett, apparently, because we'll find out something else later. He apparently borrowed it from someone else. He'll explain.
The little man is in trouble and has to be chastised. And the best punishment for an accepted Chela is to receive the reprimand through a lay Chela. On his way from Ghum to Bengal, through imprudence and indiscretion, he lost money, and instead of addressing me directly, he tried to dodge the master's eye and called upon a probationary Chela, upon whom he hasn't the slightest claim to help him out of his difficulty. Now,
we don't know who that is.
Okay.
But KH is going to teach him a lesson. He wants Sinnett to give Babaji the money
that he lost,
that he can then deliver personally to the person he borrowed it from.
Okay. So please tell him that Ram S. Gargia has not received his telegram from Burdwan, but that it went directly into the hands of the Lama who notified me of it.
So they found out about this whole situation when Babaji tried to send a telegram to someone, one of the other Chelas, to bail him out, and the telegram got confiscated and made its way to KH. Yeah, they know exactly what's going on with their Mahatmic powers.
Oh my God. Let him be more prudent in the future. You can't dodge the master's eye.
No, of course you can't. And yeah.
That's funny. You now see the danger in allowing young Chelas out of sight even for a few days. Money losses are nothing, but it is the results involved and the temptation that are terrible.
Yes, it's the karma involved.
Mm-hmm. My friend, I am afraid you too have been imprudent again. I have a letter from Colonel Chesney, very polite and quite diplomatic. A few messages like this one could serve as an excellent refrigerator.
Apparently was quite frosty.
Okay. There's a long PS here.
So he did sign it, yours KH, but he had, remember, been trying to convert Colonel Chesney to Theosophy. And after a short attempt, the colonel said, I'm not really interested. But instead of letting it go, Sinnett apparently kept trying to convince him. So now, somehow, Colonel Chesney actually sent a letter to KH, and whatever he said, it was cold and frosty.
Wow. They have refrigerators then?
Well, ice boxes, yes.
P.S. I am glad to find you reprinting in the Pioneer A Day with My Indian Cousins from Vanity Fair.
Now, this is funny because now he's tweaking Sinnett.
Last year, I had asked you to give some work to the author of those sketches after the manner of once famous Ali Baba, but was refused. You thought he did not write well enough for the Pioneer. You distrusted a native, and now his articles are accepted in Vanity Fair. I think that was a very famous magazine even back then.
Yes, it was very famous in England and everywhere in the world. Everyone knew what Vanity Fair was. So Sinnett decided that this author wasn't up to the standards for his newspaper, and now he's saying, guess what? Vanity Fair found him perfectly suitable.
I must consult you on something. Hume writes to HPB a most loving letter, I'm sure. Wasn't loving it all.
Yeah.
He sends her 2 corrected copies of a letter of his in the Pioneer of the 20th, and remarking that the time has come when, if the native press all over the country will only follow his lead and push the question strongly, material concessions will be obtained.
He's convinced that he can sway everyone's opinion if they'll just let him have his way.
He adds, "You will, of course, reprint this in the Theosophist."
Yeah, almost a command.
Like, yeah, you will, of course. Yeah. How can she do it without connecting her journal directly with politics?
This was a political issue with Hume dealing with Indian politics at the time, and they certainly didn't want the Theosophist and Theosophy to be involved in politics.
I would very much have liked to have his letter on education reproduced from your Pioneer in the Theosophist, but hesitated to tell her to do it, fearing it would give a new slant to the magazine. Some of his articles are extremely well written. HPB is better, and we have left her near Darjeeling. She is not safe in Sikkim. That was the kind of wild, wild west area where lots of...
Yes, the Sikkim Territory was wild and lawless.
The Dugpa opposition is tremendous, and unless we devote the whole of our time to watching her, the old lady would come to grief, since she is now unable to take care of herself. Oh.
So that whole area was infested with Dugpas, and they were always looking for ways to harm the Mahatmas and their Chelas.
She's unable to take care of herself because of her health or because she's in the lawless area?
Both. She was still very weak from all of the illness and the treatments that she had received. So she was still recovering. And there are so many Dugpas in the area that they can combine their forces to try to gang up on her.
Wow. See what happened to the little man. He will tell you.
And that's Babaji.
You ought to take her in for October and November.
Within a few days, Sinnett and his wife are moving back to Allahabad for the winter months, and they had already invited HPB to come and stay with them after she left Darjeeling, and she did. She spent at least 2 weeks, maybe longer, with them.
Yours again, KH.
Oh, and now there's even another PS.
Oh, gosh. This little wretch forced me to blush before you on account of his indiscretion from a European standpoint.
And that's Babaji again. And from a European standpoint is a quote from several of the letters from both Hume and Sinnett, because they were comparing how Europeans view things as opposed to how the Mahatmas view things.
I can't always be looking after my Chelas in their travels, and their knowledge of your ways amounts to nothing. When he says he was forced to blush before you...
Well, he's speaking metaphorically because he wasn't in front of him, but thinking of you, I blushed.
It is only today that I learned through Jwal Kul that he borrowed 30 rupees from you.
And that was a little over $400 today.
He had no business to do that, but you must pardon him, for he hasn't the least conception of a difference between a Tibetan and a European Chela, and acted as unceremoniously with you as he would with Jwal Kul. I return the money with thanks, hoping you will not take us all for savages.
So he had borrowed more than the equivalent of $1,000 today from 2 different people.
And KH is paying it back on his back.
Yeah, so now he's sending 80 rupees back to him.
Oh, wait. Oh, he's adding an extra 30.
He said he was sending 50 to give to him to return to whoever he borrowed that one from. Now he found out, oh, he also borrowed 30 from you. So here's the 30 that is for your reimbursement.
So he keeps adding PSs to the same letter.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I am writing you a long letter by fits and starts as usual. When that business letter is on its way, I will send another with answers to your questions. So that's the next letter.
Yeah, so Sinnett had sent a long letter with questions, and it had something to do with business. But then there's still another letter. I don't know if it was something Sinnett sent or just something that KH had in mind, but he's going to write 2 long letters.
A funny thing happened in connection with C.C. Massey's letter that I will tell you in my next letter. Hail and success to the new president at last. Who's the new president? Is that Sinnett?
Mm-hmm.
Of
the Shimla Eclectic.
Oh, because
Hume resigned.
Oh, thank goodness.
After that last letter, he's like, they don't appreciate me. I'm out of here.
Okay.
He didn't resign from the society. He resigned his position as president of the Eclectic.
So KH's third sign-off here, yours ever fondly, KH. Please pardon the unavoidable delay. This letter with the enclosed money won't reach Darjeeling in less than 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. Very funny stuff.
He couldn't just transmit it?
A Western Union?
No, he's not allowed to use his powers to do that anymore.
Probably not. Now, they could do that because HPB was involved in some transfers of money. But here's the thing. If you were able to compare the serial numbers, you would find that the one that they sent was the same as the one received. It's not like they can counterfeit it. They could, but they would certainly lose their status as a Mahatma if they did.
So the one they're sending wouldn't dematerialize.
Oh, it would. Or they would duplicate it and destroy the first one. But no, if they ever tried to create money, that would create terrible karma.
No, of course, but I'm just wondering why he didn't do that instead of making him wait 4 to 5 days.
Because it takes a lot of energy to do that.
And they're not supposed to be using the energy.
Right. Remember, they're under severe restrictions now because of Hume.
Yeah. Okay. All right, moving along, letter number 92. KH writing to Sinnett.
And he was still at Shimla, so this is October 1882, and again sent from Parijong Monastery.
Tell us again why KH is at the monastery. He's at a monastery probably giving teachings, or what do you think he's doing there?
Normally, he seems to live at Shigatse, which is farther north from Parijong. He was down there on special occult business for a period of time, and that's why they made arrangements for HPB to go meet them while he was at that monastery. And remember, this monastery is like 14,000 feet high.
And we couldn't find evidence of it in modern day. We don't know if it's there, what it's called now.
I don't know if, since the Chinese invasion, it is still operating as a monastery. That I don't know.
Is Shigatse still a recognized location?
Oh, yeah. It's a fairly sizable city, but Parijong, there's a small town there.
Mm-hmm. And these areas are in Tibet, current modern-day Tibet.
Right. But remember, Parijong is only a few miles from the border with India. Mm-hmm. It borders the Sikkim Territory.
Mm-hmm. My dear friend, the abdication of our great I Am is one of the most agreeable events of the season for your humble servant. The abdication of our great I Am.
Hume.
Okay.
He's the great I Am,
God,
the ruler of the universe.
Mea culpa, I exclaim. He's funny. He's like punishing himself. My fault. And willingly place my guilty head under a shower of ashes from the Shimla cigars, for it was my doing.
And I think both Hume and Sinnett smoke cigars, but he's talking about Hume's cigar ashes.
And when he says, for it was my doing, the abdication...
Right, and it's because of that letter he sent. He says, there's really no reason for us to continue communicating.
This is not the best outcome, but it is what needs to happen, right? So he's saying it's my fault, and that's what kind of I wanted to happen.
Yeah, they absolutely wanted it to happen. Right. Remember, they were trying to force him to make a decision, and that was the last straw. Hume said, okay, I'm gone.
Either cooperate or get out.
Yeah. But it took them a while to get him to do that.
Well, for them even to come to the point of being that direct as well took a while because they're so patient.
Yes.
Some good has come of his involvement in the shape of excellent literary work for the parent body, but none whatever for the poor eclectic. What has he done for it? He complains in a letter to Shishir Kumar Ghosh that, owing to his incessant efforts, he had nearly converted Chesney to Theosophy, when the great anti-Christian spirit of the Theosophist threw the kernel violently back. All right, we need to unpack that. Who's Shishir Kumar Ghosh?
Oh, that I don't know.
Okay.
But he sent a letter, Hume did, to Shishir Kumar Ghosh, saying, I was working on Colonel Chesney too, and I almost had him converted to Theosophy. And then he read an article in the Theosophist that he felt was anti-Christian, and that set the whole thing back. It's HPB's fault.
This is what we call tampering with historical facts. I send you his last letter to me, in which you will find him entirely under the influence of his new guru, the good Vedantin Swami, who offers to teach him the Advaita philosophy with a God in it by way of improvement.
Yeah. So they are supposedly teaching, he is, the Swami, Advaita philosophy, but they added a personal God into it to improve it, make it more palatable. Now, Almora is on the opposite side of Nepal from where the Mahatma is right now. Parijang is east of Nepal, and Nepal is long and narrow and follows right along the Himalayas, and on the opposite end is where Almora is.
I don't think we've heard Almora yet, though. What's
No,
Almora?
it's about 5,000 feet high, and it's a Hindu town. It isn't Tibetan Buddhist.
But did we hear that name yet, Almora?
No, I mentioned it just in passing, but it is a well-known town.
And that's where this new Swami is? Or?
Yes, they call him the Swami from Almora.
Okay. His argument is that with the good old Swami, he will at least learn something. This is what Hume's argument is.
Yeah.
Because he swears he's not learning anything from the masters. While with us, it was impossible for him to, quote, ever learn anything, end quote. I, quote, never gave him the assurance that all the letters were not evolved out of the old lady's fertile brain, end quote. Even now, he adds, when he has obtained subjective certainty that we are distinct entities from Madame Blavatsky. I cannot tell what you are, he says. You might be Jwalkul or a spirit of the high eastern plain.
Now, remember, he used those same words in the letter to Hume when he was answering that letter.
A spirit of the high eastern plain. I do remember that.
Right. And that was because Hume was the one who used that phrase. Mm-hmm. So he answered Hume first using the same one, and now he's repeating it here for the benefit of Sinnett.
Okay. In the enclosed letter, he says, we may be tantrikas, better ascertain the value of the compliment paid, and he is prepared to plunge from extreme Advaitism into transcendental theism once more. Amen. Oh, he's funny. He says amen.
Amen.
Oh my gosh. I hand him over to the Salvation Army. What is he talking? The Salvation Army is the new Swami and his crew? They're going to save him?
He's talking about the literal Salvation Army.
That existed back in the 1800s?
Yes, it was started, I don't remember exactly, maybe 20 years previous to this, in London, of all places. That's where the Salvation Army started. You know, the dressing up in uniforms and pounding on drums and cymbals and singing, going out in the streets and converting the masses.
I never actually thought about what that meant, the Salvation Army. Yes. I just think of it as a place you go and donate your clothes to that you don't want anymore.
No, they're trying to save souls.
Salvation. I never even considered what that is. An army to save people?
Right.
What?
Yes.
So it's a Christian organization?
Yes, absolutely.
I did not know. Did you know that? Please tell me I'm not the only one who never. Did you know that?
And here's the funny thing. They had just opened their outpost in Bombay just within a few days before this. So it was all over the news in India. Everyone in India knew at that point what the Salvation Army was.
Wow. Do they still provide missionary services?
Oh, all over the world.
Salvation.
Oh, yes. Many different countries.
Oh, my goodness. I would not like to see him sever his connection with the society altogether, though. First, for his own intrinsic literary worth, and second, because you would be sure to have an indefatigable secret enemy who would pass his time in writing out his ink dry against Theosophy, denouncing all and everyone in the society to everyone outside of it, and making himself disagreeable in 1,000 ways.
And this is what they have been afraid of all along. Hume is a very good debater and writer, and he has a lot of influence over other English people. So if he gets mad enough, he's going to become one of our most prominent and powerful enemies.
As I said before, he may seem to forgive, but in reality, he neither forgives nor ever forgets. He's like a child.
A narcissist. He's absolutely a narcissist and a sociopath because he only cares about himself. He doesn't really care about other people. He does charity sometimes, but only because it gets him attention.
It was pleasant news for Moria and all of us to hear how unanimously and quietly you were elected president. And we all, masters and chelas, fraternally and warmly greet your ascension to the office, something which reconciles us with the sad and humiliating news that Mr. Hume expressed his utter indifference to chelas and even to their masters, adding that he cared very little to meet either. That's
yeah, so sour grapes. Since he hadn't been able to meet with the masters and they didn't deign to appear to him, he's like, I don't really care. I don't even want to meet your chelas. I don't find that attractive at all.
And that's not true at all, though. He very much wants to meet everybody.
Of course he does, but since he didn't get his way, now he has to pretend like it's, oh, no big deal, I don't care. And the fact is that Sinnett only lives in Shimla part of the year. So he probably was a little concerned about how am I going to be president when I'm absent 8 months of the year? So that was an issue, but apparently they were perfectly happy with that.
But enough of him who may be better described in the words of the Tibetan proverb, like the bird of night, by day a graceful cat, in darkness an ugly rat.
Two sides to Hume.
One word of advice. An earnest warning from both of us. Do not trust little Fern. We've heard that before.
Yes, and we know that he did eventually fail, but he was like on his last warning at this point.
Beware of him. His placid serenity and smiles when talking to you of the mild scolding tempered with mercy, and that it is better to be scolded than cast off, are all assumed. His letter of penitence and remorse to Moria, which he sends to you to keep, is not sincere. If you don't watch him closely, he will stack the cards for you in a way that may lead the society to ruin. For he swore a great oath to himself that the society will either fall or rise with him.
So now we've got two people,
Jeez.
Hume and Fern, who have such egos that they have determined that if they get pushed too far, they're going to turn on the society and reveal something that will cause them to lose membership and to cause people to lose faith in them.
Fern is the secretary for Hume?
He worked as a secretary for Hume for some time, and I don't know if he still is at this point. He wasn't when he failed a few months later.
If he fails next year again, and with all his great gifts, how can such an incurable little Jesuit and liar help failing? He will do his best to pull the society down with him, with regard to belief in the brothers at least. Try to save him if possible, my dearest friend. Do your best to convert him to truth and unselfishness. It is a real pity that such gifts should be drowned in a mire of vice so strongly grafted onto him by his early tutors. Meanwhile, don't ever allow him to see any of my letters. Wow.
Yeah, remember, Fern was quite clairvoyant. They could communicate directly with him. So he had some real talent.
What else do we know about him? Was he a Western person or was he an Asian person?
Completely Western. He was born in India, though, to English parents.
Okay.
And educated by Jesuits, apparently, in India. Unless they sent him back to London or to England to be trained. But I assume they had Jesuits also, well, almost certainly, because many religious groups flocked to India to try to convert the masses to Christianity.
So he's just one of a handful of Western people who was clairvoyant. Chesney was not. There were a handful.
Well, most of the spiritualists, there were many mediums among the spiritualists, and that's why they concentrated on them first.
Right.
Stainton Moses.
That was who, Stainton Moses was.
And numerous spiritualists they tried to work with, but they could not get through their thick skulls that they weren't speaking to dead people.
Right. Stainton Moses dropped off after his debacle, and we haven't heard from him in a long time.
Yes. Now, keep in mind that in January of this year, 1882, 4 people were put on probation.
Which is actually a good thing.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing.
They were put on a certain status where they are being tried at various times to see how they react to different things. And the 4 people were Hume, Sinnett, C.C. Massey, and Fern. So far, Hume is not cut off entirely at this point, but close. Fern is all but cut off. And we're going to see about C.C. Massey, and Sinnett so far is the only one that's doing well.
Mm-hmm. And now to C.C. Massey and your letters.
Remember a year previously, more than a year previously, when Sinnett came back from England, where he spent a month, there was a very long letter. And the letter talked about Stainton Moses and C.C. Massey and various other people who they considered, the Mahatmas, to be potential helpers of Sinnett in spreading Theosophy. C.C. Massey was a barrister, and a very good one. His full name was Charles Carleton Massey. He was about the same age as Sinnett. He was interested in spiritualism. He was one of the original founders of the TS in New York in 1875. Olcott had met him apparently in 1870 when he went to London to visit. And C.C. Massey just happened to be in New York because he was investigating spiritualism, just like Olcott and HPB were. And so he happened to be in New York at the time of the founding of the society. He became a member of the London Lodge. I don't know if he was one of the founders of the London Lodge. I believe he was. But he was the first president of the lodge. So, yeah, he would have been one of the founders of the London Lodge. He later became a member of the Society for Psychical Research. And we'll hear a whole lot more about that organization in the future. In 1883, he resigned his presidency of the London Lodge. And then in July 1884, he resigned over what is known as the Kiddle Incident, Kiddle. And that's something we're going to hear about in the future, too.
And now to C.C. Massey and your letters. Your reply is excellent. Doubtless a more sincere, truthful, or more noble-minded man could hardly be found among the British theosophists. His only fault is weakness.
Yeah, remember that. He has excellent qualifications. His only problem is he's weak. And that was also Stainton Moses' problem.
Were he to learn someday how deeply he has wronged HPB in thought, no man would feel more miserable over it than him. If you remember, in my letter to Hume on the subject, I forbade all arrangements for the simple reason that the British Theosophical Society had collapsed and virtually existed no more. But if I remember correctly, I added that if they reestablished it on a firm basis with such members as Mrs. Kingsford and her scribe, Mr. Maitland, we would have no objection to teaching them through you, or words to that effect. I certainly objected to having my letters printed and circulated like those of Paul in the bazaars of Ephesus, for the benefit, or perhaps derision and criticism, of isolated members who hardly believed in our existence.
I'm not sure what he's referring to exactly. Paul wrote, I believe, 2 letters to the Christians in Ephesus, and I looked to see if there was any reference to sharing those in the bazaars of Ephesus, but I came across nothing.
But I have no objection in case of an arrangement as proposed by C.C.M., but let them first organize, leaving such bigots as Wilde out in the cold.
He had become president of the London Lodge at this point, 1882.
He being
Dr. Wilde, again, another very well qualified member, but he didn't really believe much of the Tibetan aspect of the teachings.
He refused to admit Mr. Hume's sister because, having never seen any mesmeric phenomena, she disbelieved in mesmerism.
And this is the only mention I've ever seen of Hume having a sister, so that's all I know about her.
Why would he refuse her?
That's what he's saying. This guy makes no sense.
Oh.
She didn't believe it because she had never seen anything to prove it. Well, that makes perfect sense to me. So this is how nutty this Dr. Wilde is.
He also refused to admit William Crookes, recommended by C.C. Massey, I was told.
William Crookes was a very respected scientist. He was a member of the Royal Society of Scientists and later did become a theosophist. But apparently when he first applied, Wilde turned him down, and we don't know why.
I will never refuse my help and cooperation to a group of men sincere and ardent to learn. But if such men as Mr. Hume are admitted, then the plan had better be left aside. I dread the appearance and print of our philosophy as expounded by Mr. H. I read his 3 essays on God, cosmogony, and glimpses of the origin of things in general, and had to cross out nearly all.
So after 2 very long letters about God, Hume changed most of it.
Okay.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out.
He makes us into agnostics. We do not believe in God because so far we have no proof, etc.
That's how Hume states it.
Right.
They don't believe in God, but only because they don't have proof. So that means they're agnostic, right? And K.H. had pointed out very clearly, we are not agnostic, but we are not theists. We don't believe in one God who created the entire universe. Yes, we believe in godlike entities, but they are non-personal, in fact, so non-personal that they are more principles of nature than anything else. So do not call us agnostics.
And neither are they atheists. You can't call them a theist or an atheist because those 2 terms are absolute. And agnostic, again, I know we've defined it many times, but it means that God cannot be known. It's a mystery and we can't understand it, more or less what agnostic means.
And or I'm just not sure if there's a God that exists, but leaves the possibility open. The Mahatmas are not vague.
None of these things describe theosophy, nor the masters. None of these things. What would a word be for what we believe?
For one thing, he said we could be described as pantheists.
He did say that. Pantheist, but
never a theist and never an agnostic.
Pantheist kind of relates to a religion kind of like Hinduism or like Roman beliefs.
Yeah.
We don't really love those because they worship many
those
gods.
Are very personal gods.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess that's the closest word that could describe.
But as you can tell, it's very difficult
Yeah.
to explain Theosophy
Right.
if you're trying to compare it to Christianity or Islam or one of the Abrahamic religions.
On your screen, we'll put the numbers of our videos that describe this concept in more detail, and you can go back and watch those. We dive deep into this concept, and the concept of Ishwara is prominent as well. That helps explain what the masters teach on God, so you can go back and watch those. This is preposterously ridiculous. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, you should.
You are preposterously ridiculous. If he publishes what I read, I will have HPB or Jwal Khul deny the whole thing, as I cannot permit our sacred philosophy to be so disfigured.
Yeah. And they do this a lot. They are not afraid of being attacked because they will set things straight. At least they will get the truth out there. So he said, if Hume claims that we are atheists or agnostic, and if he puts all of the information that he claims he learned from us, we will deny it. Because he is twisting it around, and we'll see why.
He says that people will not accept the whole truth, that unless we humor them with a hope that there may be a loving Father and Creator of all in heaven, our philosophy will be rejected immediately.
So that's Hume's idea. Mm-hmm. We're going to lose every Christian if we do that. We need to at least leave the door open. Well, maybe there's a God. We don't know. Maybe there's a loving Heavenly Father. And the Mahatmas are adamant about that. We know the truth. We're not going to pretend we don't know when we do. And Hume doesn't like that. He thinks it's okay to deceive people that way in order to convert them. And then what do? Do you say, well, I was just kidding about the fact that we don't even believe that that's a possibility? No, the Mahatmas are very clear. Do not ever lie to people.
You know, there is a curious caveat here, since this is a fascinating topic to me. The Mahatmas also say, and please make no mistake, that they will admit when they are not aware of something, and there are things that they're not aware of. For example, they say clearly, correct me on this, they're not aware of much that goes on outside of our solar system.
Right.
They say that, and that could be a caveat here, but that's not what Hume is talking about either. Outside of our solar system, the Mahatmas say that they are not schooled with information that goes on galactically and intragalactically. So that could be some room for other information, but that's so far beyond anything that we can even comprehend, and that's not really what Hume is talking about either. But it is interesting to know that the Mahatmas do say that there is a limit to their knowledge. They're human.
And this is a limit to their personal knowledge, meaning things that they have experienced personally. Yet they are in touch with higher entities that are experienced with that. And they all say, as far as any of them can see, there is no personal God or anything remotely like it.
In a case like that, the less such idiots hear of our doctrines, the better for all. Well, case in point, that's why.
Exactly. We don't want those people believing.
And we've said this 100 times, that this is why this is esoteric, not exoteric. That's why the whole world isn't aware of this.
And we don't want to mislead people. If people are devout Christians, you can study this stuff if you want, but it's probably not going to sit very well with your own beliefs, and that's just the way it is. We've known people who were devout Catholic and were members of the society for many, many decades, and yet toward the end of life went right back to their Christian beliefs.
I also love how they can talk like this. That's another example of how these letters are so different than other messages. These guys aren't trying to sound like super elevated, like, I'm wise and experienced, you should listen to me, preach love. He says, the less such idiots hear of this stuff, the better for all. Like,
I love that.
I know.
Just say it direct. Don't hold back.
If they do not want the whole truth, they are welcome. but never will they find us compromising with and pandering to public prejudices.
Yeah.
Very good. Do you call this candid and honest from a European standpoint? In quotes again. He's using that same quote. Read his letter and judge. The truth is, my dear friend, that notwithstanding the great tidal wave of mysticism that is now sweeping over a portion of the intellectual class of Europe, the Western people have as yet scarcely learned to recognize that which we term wisdom in its loftiest sense. So far, the only ones esteemed to be truly wise in his world are those who can most cleverly conduct the business of life so that it may yield the largest amount of material profit, honors, or money.
Yeah, Hume is still very much a materialist. Remember, he lives in a magnificent mansion in Shimla. So he has nothing against this, but it shouldn't interfere with someone who is pursuing great fame as a powerful figure and looking for money and power.
Till the very close of the fifth race, wisdom will be denied to him who seeks the wealth of the mind for its own sake, but with secondary purpose of the attainment of material benefits.
Yeah, so materialists need not apply if you're wanting to become a Chela and be taught by these Mahatmas. They're looking for altruists, people who care about humanity, and that is their top priority.
By most of your gold-worshipping countrymen, our facts and theories would be labeled flights of fantasy, the dreams of madmen. Let the fragments, and even your own magnificent letters, now published in light, be read by the general public, whether materialists or theists or Christians, and 10 to 1, the average reader will curl his lip with a sneer and the remark, all this may be very profound and learned, but of what use is it in practical life?
So 10 to 1, he's still being the odds maker here. And Light is the spiritualist magazine in London.
So Light is the name of the magazine that spiritualists published, and Fragments is...
Fragments is what Hume first started publishing in the Theosophist. It was an ongoing column of things that he had learned from the Mahatmas in their communications.
So,
and after only a few things that Hume contributed, he got disinterested, and Sinnett took over that.
The Theosophist magazine.
In the Theosophist, right.
Did that evolve into something else?
No, it's still called the Theosophist today.
It's not called Quest.
That's the TSA. The Theosophist is in Adyar.
Oh, so it's still being...
Yes.
Someone can subscribe
Tim
to...
Boyd is the editor of the Theosophist magazine.
How come we don't receive that? I might subscribe.
You should.
Okay. But now your position with C.C.M. seems to be changing, and you are gradually bringing him around. Wow. But that's Massey, not Chesney. I thought we were trying to convert Chesney.
Well, Chesney is just kind of like a new recruit. They're not that worried about him. C.C. Massey is the one on probation, remember?
Right.
Probably unknown to himself. Remember in letter number 18, when he was talking about considering C.C. Massey as a possible helper for Sinnett in teaching this new doctrine, he said that he had half a dozen illegitimate brats. Now, he was a very well-known barrister, but he never married. And whether or not the fact that he had children, and I don't know if it's with one woman or more than one, but he said he had half a dozen illegitimate brats. But that did not prevent them from considering him as a possible Chela. He had many sterling qualities.
They overlooked many different vices, like eating meat, smoking, swearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he worked at Starbucks? He was a barista?
No. A barrister is a trial attorney, someone who appears before the bar to plead cases.
Sorry. Couldn't help myself. He longs sincerely to give occultism another try and is open to being convinced. I thought he was definitely in. Why is he being put on probation?
Because they're
pursuing-
giving him a chance. He is a little bit wishy-washy. Remember, his one chief problem was weakness.
We must not disappoint him, but I cannot undertake to furnish either of them, or even yourself, with new facts until all that I have already given is put into shape from the beginning, taught to them systematically, learned, and digested. Okay.
Yeah.
And not by him, not by KH.
Right. By Sinnett.
Well, that's wonderful. It's giving Sinnett the chance to be a teacher. I mean, he already is a teacher in a certain sense.
Right. And he's saying, we have given you so much information, but it is not in a form that you can just share with people as is. You need to digest it yourself, rewrite it, come up with a plan to teach this systematically, which is what Hume complained about so much, that it was very disorganized. And it was, because they couldn't use the same techniques to teach Westerners that they used to teach Asians.
So where's this systematic teaching?
Sinnett never did it. That's the problem.
No one did?
Well, Sinnett wrote one book, The Occult World, that was more about all the phenomena he had witnessed. That was 2 years previous. And now he's in the process of writing another book, and that's where he attempts to convey all of this information. But it's a small book, and it doesn't come anywhere close to teaching everything that he has learned.
I wish we could take John Algio's Thin book and send it back in time. To me, that would be it.
We need to rewrite that, remember?
Yeah, and
that's going to be your job. You can be the new Sinnett.
Yeah. I love stuff like that, though. I love taking concepts that are challenging but important and giving them in a way that makes sense. I love that. Dang it, Sinnett, come on. What's up?
Step up to the plate.
I am now answering your numerous series of questions, scientific and psychological, and you will have enough material for a year or two. I mean, he already has enough material for a lifetime for me. Of course, I will always be ready with further explanations, but I positively refuse to teach any further before you have understood and learned all that is already given. He's questioning Sinnett. I mean, Sinnett seems to be very willing to try, at least, to digest it all. I mean, but yeah, he's questioning some things, but he's still very...
Yes, but I see no indication that he has gone back. Remember, he has all of these letters in a box that he's been collecting. He hasn't even taken the trouble to make notes when they were received, etc., etc. He went years after the fact and tried to do that, but his memory wasn't able to produce accurate information that long afterwards.
Right.
So he never did really spend the amount of time that he would have had to in order to make that an understandable, systematic presentation of the teachings.
I'll do it.
I'll write out a contract as soon as we're done.
All right. Wow. Okay. I wish we had Hume's letters.
I know. Remember, they disappeared.
Do you think anyone has tried to find them?
Oh, of course.
I mean, he has descendants. Someone, the people that bought Rothney Castle, I mean, they were probably in there somewhere.
He probably destroyed them before he died. He didn't share any of them. The only ones we have are ones that were shared with Sinnett, and then he either kept them or wrote copies of them.
There would probably be double the number of letters if we had.
Well, not double, but there would have been probably at least 100 more.
Wow. I will always be ready with further explanations, but I positively refuse to teach any further before you have understood and learned all that is already given. Nor do I want you to print anything from my letters unless previously edited by you and put into shape. This is great. This is great that he's charging him with this.
Yes.
I have no time for writing regular papers, nor does my literary ability extend as far as that.
Yeah. Sinnett is an editor of a newspaper. He knows editing. So he's got the perfect skills for this.
But with C.C.M.'s mind so prejudiced against the author of Isis Unveiled and ourselves, how will our joint sins from a European... He's really twisting the knife. He's poking from a European standpoint. not be in the way of mutual confidence? And how will they not lead to endless suspicions and misconceptions? Let's go back for a second. With C.C.M.'s mind so prejudiced against the author of Isis Unveiled, so
he's going to explain this. So that is HPB.
He's prejudiced against HPB.
And the masters. And we'll see why. There's a long story coming up.
So he's kind of like Hume.
Yes.
C.C.M. is kind of like Hume. Okay.
But he doesn't have the ego that Hume does.
Okay. I am not prepared just now to give the British Theosophists the proof of our existence in flesh and bones, or that I am not altogether HPB's confederate. For all this is a question of time and karma. What does he mean by confederate?
Well, that they are working with her to fool people into thinking that they're something they're not.
He says, I am not prepared just now to give the British...
meaning I'm not going to do it right now.
But at least he's acknowledging that. I mean, it's almost like placating them. He's saying, look, we know that's what you're asking for. You've been asking for that for a long time. We know I'm not going to do it right now. But that alludes to the fact that he might do it in the future, maybe. I'm glad he's mentioning it at least.
Remember, we've seen many instances where they do things for people who are believers in them that they would not do for anyone else because they have too much experience with skeptics, and there is nothing you can do to convince them.
But even supposing it very easy to prove that we do exist, it would be far harder to prove we are not confederates. That means what? Conspirators?
Yes.
Co-conspirators.
A KH, that is, a mortal of every ordinary appearance and acquainted tolerably well with the English, Vedanta, and Buddhist philosophy, and with even a bit of drawing room sleight of hand, can easily be found to demonstrate his objective existence beyond doubt.
We could find somebody to go visit London and pretend to be a Mahatma and help him to convince people. We could do that.
But what about giving 100% certainty that the individual is not a bogus KH, a confederate of HPB? Weren't Saint Germain and Cagliostro both gentlemen of the highest education and achievements, and presumably Europeans, not dark-skinned of my sort? Are they not still regarded today as imposters, confederates, tricksters, and whatnot?
Yeah, so both of these men, Saint Germain and Cagliostro, lived in Europe, I believe in the 1700s.
There's lots of information on this Saint Germain person, and he was a weird character, an imposter, they think.
And both of them had psychic powers, had abilities that the scientific people absolutely denied. They said they were frauds. When in fact, we know that at least Cagliostro had some legitimate gift that he had earned. But because of people and the way they prefer to view things, even today, they're both just cast off as complete, total frauds and criminals even.
I don't know much about Cagliostro. Is he in the spiritual hierarchy, or is he a master, or?
He was at least a student, a pupil of somebody, we don't know who, may not have been even in the Tibetan Brotherhood that he was connected.
Still, I am morally bound to set his mind at rest through your kind agency with regard to HPB deceiving and imposing upon him. C.C.M. seems to think he has obtained proof that is absolutely unimpeachable. I say he has not. What he has obtained is simply proof of the villainy of some men and ex-theosophists such as Harichund Chintaman of Bombay, now of Manchester, who robbed the founders, and Dayananda of 4,000 rupees.
4,000 rupees would be worth approximately $58,000 in 2025. And this Harichund Chintaman is a very interesting story. Now, when he says 4,000 rupees, that wasn't all from HPB and Olcott. It was a total amount that he robbed some people of, and part of that was put up by HPB and Olcott. While they were still in New York and were contemplating moving to India, they started investigating setting up things in advance for who they could contact and who they could work with once they got there. They didn't want to move lock, stock, and barrel and then find out there's nobody we know here. So they were searching their brains, and Olcott said, well, one time when I was on a ship coming back from England, I met a couple of Indians, and one of them was named Harichun Chintaman. Let's see if we can get in touch with him. And so they did, and found out that he was involved in an organization that was set up by this Dayananda Saraswati. And Saraswati was supposed to be a reformer of Hinduism. And who else do we know that was a reformer of Hinduism?
Olcott.
Well,
yeah. Patanjali.
Buddha. Buddha's entire objective was to reform Hinduism that had sunk to a very low level. And so this Dayananda Saraswati was supposedly doing the same thing. HPB and Olcott were very excited about this. So they actually wrote many letters back and forth. Dayananda didn't communicate directly with them, except maybe short messages. It was almost entirely through Harichun Chintaman. And there were many letters back and forth, and they eventually connected the Theosophical Society with this Society of Saraswatis, which is called the Arya Samaj. And they thought that that was a perfect fit. They had exactly the same agenda. And for whatever reason, the Mahatmas let them go ahead with it. We'll kind of find out later why they do things like that. But it turned out that once they got to India, they found that things weren't at all the way they thought they were. So within a few months, they undid this connection with the Arya Samaj and lost quite a bit of money in the process, and they lost confidence in a bunch of people because of this fiasco. So let's continue here.
I'll read the last sentence again. What he has obtained is simply proof of the villainy of some men and ex-theosophists such as Harichun Chintaman of Bombay, now of Manchester, who robbed the founders and Dayananda of 4,000 rupees, about $58,000 today, deceived and imposed upon them from the first, so far back as New York, and then exposed and expelled from the society, ran away to England, and is ever since seeking his revenge.
So Chintaman was exposed as a fraud. He was the Chela of Saraswati, and he stole money from Saraswati and from the founders of the Theosophical Society, and they revealed his crimes. So he fled India because his reputation was ruined, but now he's angry. He's now in Manchester, in England, and plotting his revenge.
Then there's Dr. Billing, the husband of that good, honest woman, the only reliable and honest medium I know of, Mrs. Mary Hollis Billing, whom he married for her few £1,000s, ruined her during the first year of his married life, took another medium as a mistress, and when vehemently reproached by HPB and Olcott, left his wife and the society and turned with bitter hatred against both women. My gosh.
Yeah, so now we've got two bitter enemies. And we've heard of Mary Hollis Billing in the past.
Yeah.
HPB wrote a letter to her at the time that KH was in Samadhi. And she and the Mahatmas considered her one of the few, if not the only, honest medium that they knew. And here's her husband, who married her for her money and then took up with the mistress, abandoning her, and who now is trying to prove that he's not the villain that everyone thinks he is.
He has been trying ever since to poison the minds of the British theosophists and spiritualists against his wife and HPB. Let C.C.M. put all those facts together, investigate the mystery, and trace the connection between his informants and the two slanderers of the two innocent women. Let him investigate thoroughly before he believes in certain reports, lest he overload his karma with a heavier sin than any other.
Yeah, so if you believe things that you have evidence is false, that brings you karma.
True. There is not a stone these two men leave unturned in order to succeed in their evil design. While Harichund Chintaman never failed once during the last 3 years to take into his confidence every theosophist he met, pouring into his ears pretended news from Bombay about the duplicity of the founders, and to spread reports among the spiritualists about Madame Blavatsky's pretended phenomena, showing them all as simply impudent tricks, while H.C. is doing all this and much more. Billing is working the London mystics.
So between the two of them, they are doing everything possible to destroy HPB and Theosophy.
He pretends to be a victim of his overconfidence in a wife whom he found out as a fake, fraudulent medium, helped and supported in this by HPB and HSO. That's Olcott.
Yeah, that's what he pretends.
Right. He complains of his cruel fate and swears on his honor that he left her only because he had found that she was an imposter. His honesty revolting at such a union. Yeah, right. That's what people do, though. When they are wrong, they deny that and make the other person wrong.
Yeah, they become the victim. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe they are trying to do that to me.
We probably all know people like that. Thus, it is on the strength and authority of the reports of such men and the unsuspecting persons who believe in them that C.C.M. gradually came to disown and repudiate the disgusting and deformed changeling which was imposed upon him under the guise of HPB. Believe me, it is not so.
And what's a changeling?
I don't know. Is it a shapeshifter?
No, it was a little bit different. In the 1800s, everyone in Europe knew what a changeling was. Whenever people had children that were kind of off, even if they had certain disfigurements or mental problems or whatever, anything that wasn't the perfect child, there was always the suspicion that the spirits had changed their own child for a different one that was defective or deformed or whatever. So there were numerous stories of changelings. And it was all because people didn't want to admit that people have karma and they're born with different things, and some of them not very pleasant. But it can also apply to an adult. Many people thought, well, HPB used to be this honest, reliable person, but she has changed. So maybe some evil entity has taken over her body now.
I did not know that.
So, yeah, that was a very prominent belief in those days. We don't encounter it anymore, thank somebody. So there we have it. We're only part way through this very long letter, but there's, again, really good information. So we will pick up there in session number 57 and see the rest of this saga. Are we in?
We're in.
We want to keep doing it?
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to Costa Rica, so I'll see you after the retreat in Nosara, Costa Rica that I lead. Maybe I'll see Eugene. Probably not.
Paul is leaving Friday for Costa Rica for 10 days, where he's teaching a workshop at Blue Spirit Resort on the Nicoya Peninsula. So anyone that wants to go, well, it's probably too late at this point.
Next time you see me, I'll have some jungle energy from Costa Rica.
And he's been doing this for the past 3 years every year.
This is the fifth one.
Fifth one. Okay, yeah. I'm wrong. 5 years.
It was originally scheduled for May of 2020, but nothing happened in May of 2020, travel-wise. So 2021 was the first one, and this is...
Wow.
Yeah, fifth one. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate your views.